Hi, this is Cathy from 360 Insights, and in this short video, I'm going to be overviewing the 2024 system-level analyses of the annual quality reports submitted by Irish higher education institutions to QQI. I've had the privilege of being involved in the analysis of the annual quality reports for the last 3 years with variably configured teams. The analysis that I'm talking about this morning was published in October 2024 as part of QQI's Insights series. The report itself contains 3 chapters. Chapter 1, System Level Analyses, which I will be speaking about in this video. Chapter 2 contains a thematic analysis of quality in Ireland's public HEIs based on the AQRs submitted. Chapter 3 contains a thematic analysis of quality in Ireland's private and independent HEIs based on the AQRs submitted. And I would really strongly encourage you to dip into chapters 2 and 3 of the reports. We won't have time to discuss those in this video, but they encompass some really interesting activity reported across the sector. It is really worth having a look at those if you have time. Okay. Before I take you on a very brief tour of the key findings within the system level analyses, I'm going to take a moment to offer some contextual notes and really some qualifiers around the analysis. So I will speak about the process itself. And after that, I will take you through some of the key findings across the system level analyses. To begin with, analysing the AQRs, I want to highlight that this can be a very uplifting experience. We do tend to see a lot of challenging headlines for the higher education sector, both nationally and internationally, and those headlines deal with important issues that we need to face. But what the headlines don't often do is give enough space to celebrating the real progress and achievement that higher education institutions make despite the challenges. They certainly don't give enough space to recognising and rewarding the dedication and the hard work that underlies that progress and that achievement. So the AQRs, in straddling quality assurance or compliance-focused activity and quality enhancement, perhaps more innovation-focused activity, offer us a lens on that, and that can be quite inspiring. But that said, the AQRs and their analysis can be a fairly frustrating review experience. Many of you will know in the sector that HEIs are offered a high degree of discretion in what they choose to report on within the annual quality reports and also the approach they take to reporting. So some institutions provide very rich description, narrative detail, elaborated case studies, and gives a lot of context around the activities that they are choosing to report on. Other institutions may take a different approach and provide more quantitative detail, reporting against progress on KPIs, including dashboards and so on. The upshot of this is that it is difficult to discern comparable analyses across certain themes in the sector each year, and also that we do not have an exhaustive catalogue of all activity. If something isn't reported by a particular HEI, that doesn't mean there was no activity within that HEI. It simply means they may have chosen to emphasise something else within their reporting. So the AQRs provide us with some great insights, but they are not an exhaustive catalogue. And with that said, as an important qualifier to keep in mind, I'm going to progress now to talking about some of the findings across the sector. It is important before I go into the findings to also just qualify that the 2024 AQRs actually refer to the reporting period September 2022 to August 2023, but they are submitted in 2024. So while we refer to these as the 2024 AQRs, it is important to just cast our minds back a little and be aware that these are actually speaking about an earlier period in time. So in the 2024 reports that refer to September 2022 to August 2023, notably, and very happily, COVID-19 recedes somewhat into the background and is less emphasised than it was in the reports for the two previous reporting periods. We do see a continued strong strain of reporting around online teaching and around online support service provision for learners. This continued to be focal. Also focal were QA updates pertaining to remote, hybrid and flexible working, and that was reported on by higher education institutions in both the public and the private sector in the 2024 AQRs. There was an ongoing focus on staff wellbeing and development. This was very prominent in the reports for 2024 and a continuing thread from the previous reporting period. Several institutions reported on staff culture, wellbeing and engagement initiatives. So activities such as audits, surveys, working groups, future plans in this area were also indicated. The development of staff policies within HEIs that were reported also reflected that thread of wellbeing. So there were examples of policies on menopause, bereavement, dignity and respect, and so on. Learning and development agendas that were reported were also broadly aligned with that theme of wellbeing and also inclusion. There was a clear focus on inclusive learning and inclusive working environments within learning and development strategies. We saw reporting on, for example, gender identity, expression and diversity training, race equality, autism awareness, disability awareness, many examples across the sector. There was substantial work reported on the enhancement of digital infrastructure in the 2024 AQRs. So this included work to enhance existing virtual learning environments, also to transition to new virtual learning environments and platforms. There was also work in the built environment reported, developing hybrid and technology-enabled teaching and learning spaces, and also technology-enabled library spaces. Across the technological university sector, unsurprisingly, there was a significant volume of activity around the integration of pre-existing systems or the replacement of those legacy systems. A number of digitalisation-focused case studies were submitted by Irish higher education institutions. These tended to report on individual or discrete process enhancements. The case studies spanned a breadth of functions, so we saw things like self-service library borrowing technology, staff recruitment and quality review group processes subject to enhancement through digitalisation. It's noted in the report that despite the volume of reporting in this domain indicating that digital transformation is well underway across the sector, very few of the AQRs referred to the development, governance or implementation of whole of institution IT or digital strategies. So it can be difficult at times to place some of those discrete case studies within the broader institutional approach to digital transformation. A number of HEIs reported on the development of systems to facilitate data-informed decision-making and the use of dashboards in particular to inform activities ranging from recruitment and admissions through to learner support, program delivery and quality assurance activity. Finally, in the 2024 AQRs, we saw a continued focus on collecting, utilising and closing the loop on student feedback, which was also prominent in the AQRs for the previous reporting period. So perhaps the biggest headline in 2024, or let's say in 2022, was the release of ChatGPT in November 2022, and subsequently the focus on the impact of large language models and generative AI. So in the 2024 AQRs, this was the first reporting period in which the sector was dealing with this. And I'm sure many people across higher education have been involved in extensive discussions on this topic. Naturally, during this period, a focus of concern was the potential negative impacts on academic integrity. The reports outlined early but multifaceted responses, and these included things like the provision of initial guidance, resources, awareness-raising activities, and also the exploration of potential technical solutions. Engagement with the National Academic Integrity Network, or NAIN, was ubiquitously reported by Irish higher education institutions, and internal to institution communities of practice were also focal. Naturally, given the emerging nature of knowledge about generative AI, the reporting during this period was typically interim provisional guidance. A number of the reports also provided good evidence that Irish higher education institutions are actively seeking to harness the opportunities AI presents, and some are well established along this path. So several institutions reported on the use of chatbots and AI tools to enhance service provision and to enable significant efficiencies. Case studies outlining the use of tools to augment student-facing services were submitted by institutions. These included case studies, for example, on how AI and machine learning have been applied to directly support students and to augment analysis of learner feedback. Overall, the AQRs reflected that the posture of Ireland's HEIs towards AI was not limited to the defensive during this period, and that there was really active exploration of the opportunities that AI presents going on alongside that focus on academic integrity. So, although external engagement was noted to be a strong theme the previous year, it was extremely pronounced in the AQRs submitted in 2024. The reports offered further insights to the importance of industry and external partnerships for Ireland's HEIs across research, across program development, and community engagement activity. Many of the partnerships are reportedly occurring in STEM domains. Others support broader sustainability initiatives. Reporting also highlighted a number of collaborations intended to facilitate industry-aligned upskilling initiatives, micro-credentials, and so on. Reporting in 2024 also reflected that the public higher education institutions and at least one private higher education institution in Ireland are continuing to engage actively in European university alliances and projects. There is a note in the report that although the importance and the breadth of those external engagements and partnerships is very well conveyed in the reporting, associated developments in terms of governance or the QA that might be needed to support this work is somewhat less discernible. And so it may be useful in future reporting to provide indications of the QA implications of such engagements, and that may facilitate opportunities for greater peer learning and insights in this area across the sector. In the previous year, the system-level analysis highlighted a continuing trend toward industry-aligned, employability-focused program provision and associated pedagogies. This was further amplified in the AQR submitted in 2024. An outcome of all of that external engagement is that the number of institutions reporting on developing new programs in collaboration with industry partners was high. Among the AQRs that offer more granular detail in this area, a continued increase of programs, including micro-credentials at postgraduate level and offered at part-time, was discernible. New program profiles, where they are provided, are most commonly situated within STEM disciplines, but they also do reflect cross-cutting themes and priorities for industry. So we see innovation, sustainability, and EDI representing quite visible threads across portfolio development. Both public and private and independent providers reported on great activities to facilitate access and widen participation, including recognition of prior learning initiatives and further to higher education pathways within their programs. So institutions including Southeast Technological University, University of Galway, TU Dublin and the National College of Ireland, for example, provided case studies that were quite inspiring to review in this domain. Okay, all of that industry engagement, of course, leads us back to teaching, learning and assessment and the impacts on learners. Higher education institutions, including Dublin City University and TUS, included updates on their intentions to increase the use of placement within the formal curriculum, and ongoing work was also reported on the enhancement of supporting processes, for example, fitness to practice policies. Case study submissions also outlined the use of a number of innovation and simulation-based and authentic assessment strategies, and we saw a lot of co-curricular employability tools, awards and supports reported across the AQRs. It's interesting to note in relation to teaching, learning and assessment that although there was a strong focus in the media on the threats to assessment posed by generative AI, higher education institutions typically devoted more space in their reporting to more broadly focused assessment initiatives. So this included continuing work to develop policies for reasonable accommodation and resources to support more inclusive assessment practice within the sector. There was a strong emphasis on universal design for learning, initiatives to engage the learner voice in assessment and feedback design, to enhance the provision of feedback to learners and to promote assessment as and for learning. So, it's, I suppose, important to note at this point that analysis of the annual quality reports always raises questions, perhaps more questions than it answers. One arising in the previous year and again in 2024 pertains to how peer review of our programs and our processes might best be represented in reporting. The template for the AQRs attempts to elicit information on this. For example, eliciting information on the composition of expert panels involved in QA reviews or program validation or approval activities. In the 2024 submissions, we saw a marked variance between institutions in relation to the number of international experts involved in peer review, which is somewhat surprising given the emphasis being placed on European and international collaboration. However, it may be that the AQR template itself is not actually capturing the breadth of processes and operations within Ireland's HEIs. Given the importance of informed peer review to quality assurance and enhancement activity, it may be useful for QQI to explore, in partnership with higher education institutions, how a better or clearer perspective on this could be gleaned from those annual reports. A second question pertains to how to capture the impact that cross-cutting themes and agendas are having on quality. So, for example, progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals, or EDI. In the 2024 AQRs, it was evident that a focus on the Sustainable Development Goals was impacting strategic plans and priorities, industry partnerships, resource allocation, research funding, the built environment, and program design, among other areas of activity. There's a really large volume of great work going on in this space reported. The broad equality, diversity and inclusion agenda is similarly prominent in institutional strategies. It's impacting the composition of our governance committees, development of new QA, the review of existing policies, the implementation of inclusive learning design and assessment processes, the accessibility of websites and platforms, and the range of supports that are available not only to learners but also to staff. And again, there's lots to celebrate here. But despite the high visibility of these themes throughout the AQRs, it's difficult to trace their impact due to the varied ways in which they're reported. And we suggest in the report that QQI could usefully consider how in future it might gain a clearer view of the broad agendas and how they're impacting QA systems and frameworks. That would really enable some valuable peer learning and some comparability or consistency perhaps across the sector in these areas. As ever, how to capture and convey the effectiveness of QA implementation. The annual quality reports tell us what has been developed, what has been initiated, tell us about particular projects, but perhaps don't necessarily convey the impacts of QA implementation and document how that is tracked and monitored across institutions. Finally, it is very difficult in annual reports to represent complex multi-year projects in annual snapshots. Thank you for listening. I hope that this video has been of some value to you in gaining an insight into quality in the Irish higher education sector for the reporting period. And once again, I would strongly encourage you to dip into the full report and to explore the thematic analysis in chapters 2 and 3, in particular, as they would give you much greater insight into some of the really inspiring activities going on in the public and the private or independent sectors, respectively. Thank you for listening.